Yeah, so we're going to talk today about how to find your ideal clients. I think that was the original title for this meeting. AKA, wait, how to find your ideal client, or how your ideal clients find you online. And really, what I really wanted to talk today about was actually how you can become attractive to those ideal clients. And so, hold on, let me just, 1 second, I'm sorry. So when you think about it, like what's going to make you attractive to your clients is really looking at your digital footprint. And I know that Catlin, you talked about this in the past, and you guys kind of went deep into the whole kind of value proposition. And so today we're going to take it a little bit further, and we're going to talk about what does that actually look like? Like, what are the pieces that you need to have in place in order to be attractive to your ideal clients so that they kind of come to you? And and when we kind of pull that back a bit, we're actually going to look at what are those fundamental things. So we're going to look at the 4 keys to turning prospects into paying clients. Like, what is it that's really the mechanism that actually makes them want to kind of work with you? And then specifically, we're going to dig a bit deeper into your website. And we're going to look at the 6 must-have things that you want to have on your website to really convert people into paying clients that you actually love. Okay, so that's what it actually looks like. I am going to.
Hey, Carolyn, before you dive in, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Yes,
I did a very poor job of it. So it'd be great if you just let the group know, how you came to be who you are professionally and what you do and how you work with people, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yes. So my name is Carolyn Shadrach.
Oh, it was there. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to tell people like what to expect first, but then yes.
I'm such a Budinsky.
No, it's fine, Jonathan. So my background is actually in fashion design. So I worked as a fashion designer for almost 2 decades, in fact, actually. And so kind of got to travel the world for Fortune 500 companies. I worked in London, Paris, and New York. I've led multi-million-dollar accounts. And recently, so in the last 8 years, I've actually started my own business, which is called Core Story Branding. I'm the #1 best-selling author of the Client Attraction Code, and I am a digital marketing strategist, which is as Jonathan explained. So all of this sounds really, really amazing, but the truth is that the road was not always smooth. In fact, it was 8 years ago that I kind of walked away from my career in fashion, and at the time I was just completely burnt out. So, on the outside, it looked like I was doing amazing, but I really didn't have the skills to work in a corporate environment. And what I mean is I've always loved design and still love design. But, if you're working in a corporation, you have to have other skills, and I just didn't have those. And so after 20 years, I was completely burnt out. I developed chronic asthma. I literally couldn't walk a block without actually kind of getting out of breath. It was kind of crazy. Like my body was just kind of decomposing, even though I was kind of like pull my socks up and get on with it. And so I had to go on my own quest to heal myself, which kind of it brought me to a life coach. I worked with a business coach, an energy healer. I really needed to heal myself. And coming out of that, I actually decided I wanted to be certified as a life coach myself. And so I kind of got the tools, I became certified, and I thought, okay, this is great. Now I'm qualified, the people will come. Well, of course, they didn't actually come. There was actually like crickets at that time. And so that's the same for a lot of the people that I work with now, is that, very kind of qualified, very kind of competent. In fact, you do your jobs excellently well, but, how do you actually find these clients? So I realized that I could actually be much more of service using my background in branding, all the experience that I had as a fashion designer, and I've kind of gone back and retooled using the digital marketing skills and digital marketing tools to really help my clients be seen, get heard, and find the clients that they actually love. And so that's really what we're going to be focusing on today.
Hey, can I ask a question? Sorry to interject, but what was it? I had 2 questions. What was it about being a life coach what were you hoping to accomplish? What drew you to being a life coach? And then my second follow-up is, what skills did you learn in getting certified as a life coach that then transferred into what you're doing today?
Yeah, that's good questions. So really, my what attracted to be a life coach in truth was because I knew that there were all these people that I had worked with in fashion who, like me, were basically on the edge, right? They're all burnt out, all kind of literally kind of on the edge, but kind of hanging in together. Since leaving my former career, I realized like a lot of the people that I used to work with in order to manage have basically been on, things like Prozac and antidepressants for, I'm talking like 15, 20 years, like a long time. So I don't know if you, Jonathan, or anyone on the call has actually watched the movie, The Devil Wears Prada, that came out with Mel Streep a few years ago. Yeah. And all of it was completely true. I mean, the job was just very stressful. In fact, I couldn't even watch that movie up until recently. I watched it recently with my kids. I realized the whole first part was so traumatic for me that I couldn't even take in the second part. Yeah. So yeah, it's hard. And so I knew that there were lots of people who needed the skills that I had found once I left, right? Like my whole experience being in corporate would have been completely different if I knew the whole tools that I learned from working with a life coach and that whole kind of self-development side. My whole experience would have been different if I had those skills as a fashion designer. And so my intention was to go in and, help these people that I knew needed help. But the problem is you can't actually help anyone until they're ready to help themselves. Right. Yeah. And so what happened was I actually, at that time, was kind of surrounded with entrepreneurs and people who were kind of looking to build their own businesses. And so those were the people that I started helping as a life coach. And but once I kind of gotten past the initial blocks, then I was looking at their things and I was like, well, why don't you do this? Because things that they were doing were immediately obvious to me because of my background with branding. And they're like, oh, how do you know that stuff? I was like, doesn't everybody know? And apparently they didn't know. And so that's how I kind of came into it. And then your second part of your question was, what are the skills that the life coaching kind of brought to what I do now? And really, it's really helped me in terms of having conversations with people and really kind of pulling things out from people in terms of what are the things that are really behind the issue that's on the surface. And what I mean by that is often there's like surface issues that people think are the problem, but very often that actually isn't the problem. There are actually things behind it which they haven't been able to pull out. And so having the skills as a life coach has really helped me to kind of listen to people to find out what actually are the issues that is stopping them from to being able to achieve what they want to achieve.
And just one last question, then I'll get out of your way. What's the typical size of businesses that you work with? Is it do you have a niche that you focus in?
Yeah, most of the clients that I work with are coaches and consultants, and typically it's like they're really small in terms of it's a 1 to 5. So solopreneurs, and then you kind of just moving on to that where they actually need some help, but it's not big businesses. My husband, on the other hand, because my husband has his own business, and we used to work together for a while. He has a business in photography and more videography, and he works mostly with small businesses, and he tends to work with a lot of businesses in the healthcare space, and so it's like a larger scale. But I actually prefer working with smaller businesses.
Got it. Okay, thanks. I couldn't help but ask.
No, that's good. It's good to ask. Okay, so let's see what I have next. Okay, so as I said, behind everything that you have online, when you think about your online footprint, whether it's your website or your, if you have your LinkedIn presence, your social media presence, when you think about how you can turn those turn prospects into paying clients, there's 4 keys that you really want to think about in terms of, okay, what are the clues that I'm leaving for people so that they can say yes to me? And in order to do that, there's 4 things that you really need to make sure that you're hitting on. And the first is you need to build their trust. And when you think about it, just think about your own kind of shopping experience. Like whenever you buy anything, I don't know about you, but I normally tend to go towards brands that I know and trust, right? Because you understand that they have presented a level of consistency, if that's important to you, whatever is important to you, right? That becomes the brand that you kind of lean on. And so when you think about your own brand, like your own business, you want to be able to kind of build trust so that people know, okay, I can trust this person. I can actually hand over money to them. And there's a couple of ways that we can do that, which we'll kind of go into a bit more in the depth. But I want you to kind of think about these principles as we're going through the 6 things when we'll look at going deeper to look at your website. The second thing is when you can actually solve their problems. And I know that when Caitlin went through this, I think about a month ago, and actually I know Elizabeth has been talking about this to you too, right? When you can actually niche down so that you can identify a particular group of people, they tend to have a lot of the same problems. And so on your website, in fact, all of your digital presence, when you can actually speak to the problems that they are experiencing specifically, right, as opposed to be general problems, then it's almost like a signal to them, oh yes, this is a person that can actually help me, right? And so this is what we're trying to do with our website. We're trying to leave clues so people know, yeah, yes, you're in the right place. And so when you can say that I am, the amazing, I serve law firms, and you call them out on your website, then people know, oh, this is a person that I can listen to because I'm in the right place here. And we can solve particular problems for them, whether it is in information that we give away, whether there may be something that they can opt in for, like a checklist, all of these things. You're solving problems for them before you even ask for any money. And all of that, again, actually helps to do the first thing that we talked about, which is building trust. The third thing is become a resource. And in this, there's a couple of different ways that you can kind of look at it. You can become a resource in terms of information, right? Because you can give people information, especially if you understand what their problems are. You can give them quick wins so that they know, okay, she understands my problem and I can go to her to kind of solve bigger issues that I have. You can also become a resource in a way that you can, if you understand the issues that they have, it may be the case that you are not always the person to solve them, right? So there may be other things that you can actually recommend to them, knowing what their problems are. And again, so that they look to you as being the person who can, oh, like, yeah, she knows actually, whatever it is, like I'm trying to think, whether it is a software that you can recommend for them, or it's a particular, even a partnership, that you can refer to them. You become somebody that they look to as a trusted advisor.
Yeah. An example, just to throw out what an example. So that might be for law firms, helping them handle electronic payments, right? Mm-hmm. So you're a resource that connects them to a tool that the benefit of that tool is, increased cash flow or different ways to engage their clients. So just to put a little structure on that.
Yeah, no, that's great because as you said, Jonathan, once you've niched down, it becomes a lot easier to be able to kind of fulfill all of these things, because as opposed to giving people just general information, like what you just talked about is very specific to lawyers, like they're going to need that, right? And then the fourth thing to think about is providing a fresh perspective. And it's interesting, Elizabeth and I had a conversation a couple of days ago, and I was doing some research for this, and I came across somebody who called themselves I think it was the cutest LinkedIn accountant the cutest account on LinkedIn, which I thought was really kind of interesting.
What was it called? Say it again.
He was calling himself.
I went and looked at that guy too. It was funny.
Right, it was like the cutest. I think he's called himself the cutest accountant on LinkedIn. Right, you can Google him and find him. And so he's been actually providing content. I think he does videos, but he gave himself this name. And, so he basically has built this kind of persona. Now, not all of you are obviously going to be kind of comfortable building up like a particular persona, but what you shouldn't be afraid to do though, is to put some of your own perspective. Like if, whatever values that you have, if you want to talk about yourself or why you do what you do, all of this actually helps you to stand out from the crowd, from the other people, because people will remember it. It's very unlikely that your story is the same as anybody else. And it actually can become the biggest asset that you have in terms of making yourself different from all the other people out there. Because what we're trying to move away from is this idea of the services that you provide as a commodity, and as actually somebody, like the specific person that they need.
And doesn't that, what you just said, providing a fresh perspective and putting yourself out there and creating a voice, doesn't that directly create trust? I mean, doesn't that tie directly in, because people buy people?
Yes, they do buy people, and it's interesting. And I think sometimes people are afraid to do this because they think that that it's going to turn some people off. And it will turn some people off, but that's actually a good thing, because you're not out there to actually to work with everyone, right? Because we all know, especially if you are like a smaller business, you know, working with somebody who's not aligned in terms of your values, in terms of your kind of viewpoints, it just becomes a complete nightmare, right? You get those nightmare clients. And so the more that you can actually talk about your values, what's important to you, what happens is that you attract those people, but you also start to repel the other people as well. And so an important part of attraction is the repelling part, right? That you don't want to attract everyone.
Yeah, in LeanLaw, we call that failing fast. So we want to fail fast, because if we fail fast, we put the least amount of effort into what will be a bad relationship in the sales process. So I always coach my sales team. I want to fail fast, because if it's clear, it's okay to fail if it's not a good fit. And
exactly.
I don't want that 3 months from now. I want that in the first week for that.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And it, you know, it's kind of one of those things, especially if you are kind of early on in your business, can be hard to, I don't know, it's sometimes for a lot of people, they have to experience it first, because you feel like you have to, like you want to, you know, if someone's offering you money, you're always want to take it, but you actually kind of learn those best relationships and the people who are going to be like a lot harder work. Okay, so I think now we're going to move into the sections. And actually, I forgot to say, so I think, Elizabeth, we actually kind of handed out these the checklist, right? So people may be able to kind of print that off as you're kind of listening to me, or pull it up.
Yeah, I can put it in the chat.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to be walking through now the, as I said, the 6 sections on your website that you really want to have. These are the 6 must-haves for a high converting website. So the first one is the hero section. And when Catlin talked a few weeks ago about the value proposition, but in the hero section is definitely where you would have that big, bold headline, like that's the big promise that you're going to make. On the checklist, if you have it in front of you, you can see that I've also talked about this idea that you want to have like some sort of call to action, whether it is schedule a call with me, or make an appointment. You know, some of you may have something that you want to, that you can also demo. That call to action, you want to have that in the hero section. And the hero section, I also want to mention, is also called above the fold. And above the fold is really a concept that came from newspapers. Depending on how old you are, you can remember newspapers where you actually had to kind of fold them. And so it was like above the fold in digital terms means before you actually have to scroll to see something else. So when you look at your website, you want to make sure that before anyone scrolls down, right, they can get a good idea of who you are by the bold headline that you have, by the call to action, so they know, okay, this is the next step that I can take. And also here, I've also talked about this idea of having aspirational images. Now, images can be like a big signal for people because it can show them something about you. Now, I know that Jonathan, in the past, you talked about people having a picture of themselves, and those work really great because people get to know, can see, oh, this is the person that I can potentially be working with. In terms of other images, you really want to have aspirational images. So you can see, so it tells people, this is what the experience can be like if I work with this person. And so for you, it might be somebody who has like, you know, a very kind of organized office. They look very kind of confident. And so it's like the image itself becomes a promise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I guess you have to be a little careful here, right? Because you could get corny really quickly, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's true. Yes, because like I think what tends to happen is people think that they need to have these stock photographs of people in suits, you know, with the B2B side, right? And that actually doesn't work at all, right? You definitely do not want to do that. So you really do need, it's a kind of fine line. There are, if you're doing this yourself, there are kind of like stock services. And when I say stock services, these are, what is it called? They're basically images that you know that you're allowed to use on your websites.
They're
and
royalty free. They're open source, right. Royalty free.
Yeah, royalty free images. And there's what I was going to say is there's things like Shutterstock, for instance. They have very kind of cheesy images, but there are alternatives that you can use, ones that you can use like Pixabay, Unsplash, a couple of that come to mind. and you're looking for something that isn't perfect when you're thinking about images. Like it should look. I'm trying to. Actually, I'm going to look at something.
It should look authentic and
It
messy.
should look authentic, yeah. And actually, I'm going to. I think I pulled up a couple here so we can have a. Oops, hold on, what's happened here?
Well, and I was going to make a comment since we're pulling up some sites. To me, like a hero statement shouldn't be, we work with lawyers. I mean, that might be there. It's like we help lawyers run better law firms, or we help lawyers run better businesses. I mean, that's LeanLaw's tagline. It's not just we work with lawyers. It's we help lawyers run better businesses. There's a value proposition there, or a statement.
Yes, exactly. In fact, actually, I think I broke down this statement here. Looking at this checklist here. So I also use the AIM formula. So A stands for aspirational, like what your clients aspire to be. So, you know, like if you want, it could be a statement. I'm trying to think about a statement. I should have written this down. We help you to be X, Y, and Z. Like what is it they want to be? B helps you to be like the badass little law firm of the Midwest, whatever that looks like. Like it can be an aspirational statement. For most, I was looking at a couple of examples here, and it looks like in your, you know, in the B2B space, most of the time people use a statement which is more kind of informational. This is what we will do for you. And sometimes it will be like a promise in terms of this is, you know, if you work with us, this is the promise of what we can do. So yeah, if you look at LeanLaw, you're basically making a statement, like legal billing software for small to mid-sized law firms. So it's very kind of clear.
And we were intentional. Hold on, so we were intentional with that because we wanted the word mid-size, and we replaced that with an aspirational one, be the hero, which was something like, we were like, hey, be the hero to your firm, and it was aspirational, but in our consumer, they were too commodity driven when they first look at the site, and they're like, be the hero, what the heck is that? Right. So we needed to get very commodity driven, saying this is what we are and this is who we work with. Mid-sized law firms.
Well, I think because, you know, when you think if be the hero is what you had before, the other thing is it wasn't actually very specific. And that's the other thing that you want to do with you know, when you're thinking about your headline, is the more specific you are, the better it is in terms of being able to tell people exactly who you are and what you do, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So actually, hold on, I need to move you over here. There we go. So I can actually see things here. Let me just move this over. There we go. So this is like another one that I pulled up here. This is actually for some attorneys, as you can see, right? So they said experienced attorneys providing family law services in a comfortable and relaxed environment. And so here again, right, they're calling out that it's family law. And I like that they said comfortable, relaxed environment, because you can imagine when people think about coming to someone about issues that they have with their family, that you really want to have like a relaxed and comfortable environment, right? It sounds very enticing.
Exactly, because family law can be divorce, family law can be adoption, family law can be money related. So you're totally right and astute in picking that up, but that's about taking the stress away of a very stressful conversation.
Exactly. And then you can see here in terms of the image, right? They've got like a happy family here as well. You know, again, like this image that they use isn't completely perfect. It looks like you know, she's wearing a very kind of casual t-shirt and stuff, and so it looks like a family that you actually might know, even though you can probably tell that it is a stock photography, right? But it doesn't look too cheesy.
Well, the mother and daughter actually look alike, so that helps.
Right, yeah. And then you can see that they've got the call to action, contact us here, and I think you also want to kind of repeat it over here on the right hand side, and this is actually has to do with the way that your eyes scroll down a page, when you can have it in a couple of places. So over on the right hand side, as well as sometimes it's here on the left, or it might be in the middle. But again, you're just kind of using that real estate very kind of wisely. I think I picked another one here too. Okay, this is Candly, which is like a scheduling service. But again, you say easy scheduling ahead. And it's interesting because with all of these sites, they're using like an adjective which kind of ties in with an emotion, right? And people buy on emotion, like that's really what people buy on, although we all like to think that we're kind of more logical. And so when you use these adjectives, it can really kind of bring a feeling to the brand. Like, what type of feeling do you want to have with your brand? Like back in the day when I was doing fashion, I used to work with Gap. And some of you may know Gap used to own Old Navy. I think they might have sold it off, as well as they own Banana Republic too. And so Gap was kind of like this, it's middle road, it's easy, casual stuff. I always used to wonder, because I grew up in London, right? And we only had Gap. We didn't have Banana Republic and we didn't have Old Navy. So I wasn't so familiar with those brands. But at the time, this is back in the 90s, I think, all of these brands would have a chino pant, right? And I thought, well, why would you spend $50 for a chino pant when you could, why would you spend $90 for a chino pant from Banana Republic when you could get it for 50 at Gap or 10 at Old Navy? And what it is, each of those brands had their own feeling. And for the most part, most of the people who were aligned with whichever brand it was didn't really kind of cross over. People who were drawn to Old Navy because it was fun, it was, irreverent, it wasn't very taking itself very seriously. People of Banana, were much more kind of orientated towards business. And so, and this was what can happen with your brand, right? People come to you for a particular feeling. And so when you can use these kind of adjectives and kind of express who you are within your website, and you can see it's just like a couple of words that can make a difference, then people really kind of tap into you.
And I think what's important to reiterate here is that with most of these small businesses, they are a brand. I think they lose sight at the concept of because it's themselves, and they think of themselves as the utility of what they provide. But there is a brand, and I think sometimes small businesses disconnect with the concept of a brand because they're so fixated on, well, I'm the business and here's my product. But there's something out front that the consumer's interacting with, which is that brand. At least that's what I see in my sort of interactions.
Yes, exactly. And I think that I know that one of the things that you guys talk about is that, when you brand yourself, you can move away from this idea of you being a task-driven commodity, as opposed to somebody who's really kind of partnering with your clients, right? And you're providing a service which is of value to them, but you're also kind of invested in the end result that they want. Like that's a possibility that happens when you kind of focus on yourself as a brand, rather than a service which can be a commodity and people can get that same service from anyone else.
Okay.
All right. So then if we're moving down the page, and we'll look at a couple of examples in a minute, these next sections, there's 3 sections, right, can be interchangeable. So when we look at a couple of pages in a minute, you'll see that some of these have these different sections in different positions, but you really want to make sure that you actually touch on each of these sections, but they may be placed differently. So the first one is digging into the pain. And what I mean here, again, and this goes back to this idea that you really need to understand your niche and the problems that they're going through, because you want to speak to the specific pain and issues that they have on your page, so that they really understand. I mean, it's almost like a dog whistle, right? If you can speak to the pain and the issues that they have, they're like, oh my God, yeah, this person, she knows exactly what I'm going through. And then you kind of give it, you talk about how you help with the solution. But if you don't do that, right, again, if you're not very, very specific, it's easy for people not to see you. Like they literally won't even see you, because all of us are bombarded with so many messages during the day. I think somebody quantified it, I think 3,000 messages a day, something crazy, right? We give people when we come to a new website, we're looking for all of this information in about 5 seconds, right? And so that's why it's so important to really hone in on your message.
I'm going to pause you there for a second, because I want everyone to really hear that. The attention span is what, 3 to 5 seconds that someone really has on a web page. So in 3 to 5 seconds, which is 15 words, 20 words roughly, and some images, they're processing whether they click off or they click through, right?
Exactly.
It's kind of right. So, and they're making an impression of you, right? So there's all of that happens in 5 to 7 seconds of click in this day and age. And it could be on a mobile device, it could be on a website, it could be on a tablet. But you really it's that quick, and you have to think of yourselves as consumers, and you're sitting in Instagram as an example, and someone has an ad and you've got 5 seconds, are you going to click it? And you say, okay, yeah, I'll click it, right? Or not, right? And you've got that much time to get someone's attention.
Exactly. In fact, 5 seconds is actually probably generous. It's actually probably more like 2 seconds. I mean, you think about it when you're kind of scrolling through your own feed and thing, right? Yeah,
And it might be a little slow, a little bit different for referral marketing, where someone's referring you, so they'll take a few more minutes because
absolutely.
someone said, hey, go look at Jonathan and go look at his website. But it's still, that busy attorney is still going to open up that website and maybe give you 7 seconds. And if they don't see what they like, they're like, why did they say I should go look at him? Right?
Yes, yeah, that's right. That's right. You know, because we're going to go through this deep. I think we're going to be doing some more on this too. There's something which is called the hierarchy of topography. Basically, that means if you look at this page here, this screen that we're looking at right now, right? The thing that steps out that probably pulls you immediately is the headline, right? The placement is not critical. Then you're going to look at paying guide divisions, right? And then if you look deeper, you'll say, oh, it's digging into the pain, right? She's talking about position yourself as a guide. And that's the same way that people look at your website. You want to have like the big headlines, the boldest things, calling out the critical information that you want to get to people. Then there's a secondary information, and then there's a third when you pull people in and they might get into the nitty gritty. But when you think about your website as a whole, you're looking for people who are scrolling to get an immediate impression. And that's why it is important. Your headline's important, your images are important, and even the placement that you have in terms of things. Like I said, like you really want to see, when you're thinking about your website, what's happening above the fold. Because some websites that you look at, it's like there is no structure, and that's when it becomes really difficult. And as Jonathan says, sometimes, you know, people will you'll get referrals and people are going to go and check you out. The harder you make it for them to find the information, right, that's when you start to kind of lose people. And people will give you the benefit of the doubt. Like if you have a referral, those can be like the best clients. But you know, even with referrals, it depends on how well they know that person affects how much benefit of the doubt they're going to give you. Like if the referral is from someone who's like their best friend, like lifelong friends, like it doesn't matter what your website looks like, they're going to call you anyway, right? But more often than not, it's somebody that they've worked with, and yeah, there is some level of trust, but they're going to want to see some signals that they're in the right place, and that's really what you want to do.
And I think what's interesting, and I don't mean to put the cart before the horse, and just to keep in track and time, it's 1:43. It's 45 after the hour. But the one thing that I ask is that, you know, aren't we really just trying to get the next step, right? Meaning, I think sometimes we get a little caught up in trying to tell them everything on the website.
Yeah,
and you're really just trying to help them get to the next step, whatever that next step is in that sales process.
Yes, you are. You know, your front page actually shouldn't have everything and all the nitty gritty. You know, I'm going to see if I can pull up some pages here, like where I've talked about divisions. I think I go into it a bit more in the checklist, but this should be this is not everything that you do, right? If you look at this website here, they're pulling out a couple of headlines where here, divorce, child custody, you know, they pulled out 4 things here. But if you actually look up here and you wanted to have more, there's more that you can go into. And this is the same thing that you want to do with your website. In terms of divisions, you want to talk about these are your big money makers, and it should be no more than 3 or 4, because otherwise people start to get confused. Again, right, you're trying to avoid confusion. You just want to talk about your big areas. Then you want to talk about, you know, talked about the problems. So here again, they've given you a headline, and then you can go in and look in terms of more about how they can help you. But because the headline itself, and this is a sub-headline, right, is pulling in this idea of, okay, we know how to give you solutions for your family needs, right? The headline, and then you can pull in and you give a bit more. But again, this is just one paragraph, right? This is not like, it's not reams of writing, because the other thing that will drive people away is if there's too much text. People are just used to scrolling, especially with social media. Now, one of the other things that you can see on this particular site, you know, they are highlighting they're actually attorneys, and so this is giving their perspective. And so people who are interested, they can immediately get an impression because they can see them, but then they can click on more to find out more. One of the other things that I've talked about here, let me just get back over here, is the step-by-step guide. This is like the 1, 2, 3 of what to do next. Now, a lot of websites actually don't do this, but if you can actually tell people, okay, they come to your website, you've given them an impression, like in 2 seconds, they kind of got it. If you can tell them, okay, this is what you do next, schedule a call with us. We'll make a call, we'll come up with whatever it is that happens in your call, and then this is the outcome. If you can do that on your website, this is like huge, because most people, even if they want to work with you, if you don't tell them, okay, even if you're saying, okay, just schedule an appointment, people are wondering, okay, well, what happens when I schedule that appointment? What am I going to talk about? What do I need to prepare? If you can actually say that and say that in just a couple of sentences, again, this is not a long paragraph. You're literally, if you can do the 1, 2, 3, this is what happens. This goes a huge way to kind of alleviate any kind of anxiety that people have in terms of how they can work with you and what it actually looks like to work with you.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I'm going to just make one little comment. I think that's important because, you know, lawyers, especially if you're a small accounting firm talking to a small law firm, have a sense of, how do I say it? It's their financial operations are not the strongest point of what they do. And they're coming to an accounting professional for 3 reasons. One is they want to outsource something. 2, they're starting something, or 3, something's failing. And most of the time something's failing. And so they have to sort of coaching them through how that first interaction and how it's not a difficult conversation, what you might talk about, is really helpful to sort of diffuse the emotionality of it and to get the lawyer clear as to what you want to talk about. So you're phrasing what the conversation's about versus, you know, the conversation going out. So I think understanding and recognizing why people are calling you and coaching them through that conversation is very applicable to this 1, 2, 3 step.
Yes, and it definitely does help to kind of, you know, when you're having those conversations, to have like a structure to them, and in terms of your website, to just give them a hint of what that actually looks like. Yeah, because as you said, you know, they have issues. What they're looking for is someone who's going to make it simple to solve the issues. And then the other thing that I've talked about here is offering a gift. Now, you don't have to offer your firstborn here with a baby, but when you can offer something which, and this could be like a simple PDF. I think actually, Jonathan, you were mentioning something before, that people may be able to, that you may be able to offer something that the law firms actually look for in terms of a checklist. You know, we talked about this idea of resources. Resources actually is something that you can actually, you know, you actually might have a page that people can click to in terms of having resources. But one of the things that I was saying, Jonathan, is that the other thing that people can do is have something that the people visiting your website can actually opt in for. And this is ideally what you want, because if you can give them something where they're going to leave their name and their email, right? And in exchange, you're going to give them something of value, right? That will help them to kind of get a quick win with one of their problems. Then these people, you can actually have them on your email list, on your database of emails. And then you can start to have, this gives you more touches in terms of being able to have follow up with that conversation. In terms of what you give away, the more specific that you can be, the better as well. And what I mean specifically is that, of course, I'm trying to make it up. If you give them something about,
well, let me
give me something. Yeah,
Carol, let me give you. So an example of something you would give them would be, here's how, you know, here's the 10 steps to do a trust reconciliation at the end of the month. Like, so here's a quick guide to trust reconciliation, the things you have to do every month. So that plays something specific to law firms and how they handle trust accounting. It's plays to compliance and making sure that they are performing their fiduciary responsibilities with handling clients' money. It's a high stakes thing that if they do it wrong, they could potentially lose a license. And it also speaks to your competency that you know how to do this, that you can distill it down into a simple form. So it's like something that is so like, oh, I need that, I should get that, and this person knows what they're talking about because that's what they're communicating back to me. I mean, that's the first thing that came to mind. I could think of 2 or 3 others
right, yeah,
that are like that, but that's to me, that's a pretty easy one.
Right, exactly. And that's a really great one, because you have been specific and you've talked about a specific problem, then you can actually start to extend that conversation, because now they are on your email list. And so you can talk about, okay, first of all, you can talk about some other particular consequences that they may not be aware of. You can also start to give them some case studies as well. Like you might literally have an email. This is what happened with Caitlin, this attorney firm when we started working together and what the results are. And so, even if they don't kind of sign up or to schedule an appointment initially, you're giving them further touches where you can start to extend that conversation with them. And I think it's actually been, I think it was about a few years ago, they used to say that people needed about 7 touches before they felt comfortable handing over money and working with people. Now I think it's actually kind of closer to 15. And so you want to, all of these things are touches that you have with your potential clients, which again, all of this is starting to build trust and authority in this case too, so that they know that you are like somebody that they want to work with.
And one little note, you also are talking to upmarket with lawyers, you're talking to upmarket professional services folks. So the more authority you have in your voice, the more equality you have in that dialogue, because you're not selling a commodity to, some other company, you're dealing with other professional services. So being specific and having the content be meaningful to the recipient only elevates your stature in that attorney, and they're willing to not only pay more, but be more apt to engage you because of your authority on the subject.
Absolutely. And again, I kind of go back to my own kind of shopping experiences and how I do things. I don't know about you, but I am always, whenever I'm going to buy something, it's particularly when it's something new, I scour all the testimonials, all the reviews. And again, and this is one of the things that you want to do on your own website, make sure that you have testimonials on there. I know in the past, you guys have also talked about case studies as well. So initially on your website, you might have some testimonials, and then you can have like a link out to really dig into like some case studies so you can show your results. Because all of this, again, right, what we're doing here is building trust, but showing your credibility and authority, and you're easing the anxiety so that people can want to work with you. They're actually going to start to get excited to work with you, right? Because they know that they can trust you. So with everything that we talked about today, you can start to use this checklist to actually kind of look at your own website. When you look at your website, when you pull it up on a laptop or a desktop computer, what's above the screen on, what comes up above the screen? Are you hitting all of these areas that we have talked about? Where can you make some changes? What things can you improve? Don't forget, also look at your website on mobile as well. A lot of people are doing, initially will check you out on their mobile phone before they kind of get over to their computer or their laptop. So you want to make sure that you're hitting all the spots here on your mobile too, as well as, and I think you guys have talked about this, right? Make sure all your links and stuff are working. But go back to the 4 things that we talked about: building their trust, solving problems, becoming a resource, having a fresh perspective. When you can start to hit all of those areas within your website, that's when you can have a website that is going to convert people, and that you can be proud to actually send them over to your website when you get a referral.
And before we end, I just wanted to tell everybody that we're within the group in the beginning of the fall, we're going to have a class that you can opt into with Carolyn, a 4-week class on how to optimize your online presence, your digital footprint, essentially. So keep on a lookout for that. And if that's something that you're interested in and you want to reserve a spot, because we're only going to have 10 people in that course, so that
I was just curious about that. How many
work
people?
together and have a small cohort and, help each other. That's part of, the collaboration of this group that we're trying. The group is free. This course will be a paid course. But if that's something that you're interested in, you can send an email to me or Caitlin, and I'll put our emails in the chat as well, and we can reserve your spot.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, well, first of all, Carolyn, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. It was really fun to talk with you. I hope you didn't mind me. Can't help myself but to ask questions and interject.
No, it was. Thank you so much, and thank you, Elizabeth and Caitlin too. It was great to be here, and actually thank you for your questions, because you know, your questions, I think, actually helped it to make it real for people so that they can really start to apply it, you know, to their businesses. So it was great to have your questions, Jonathan. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it's important to try to translate it back to law and how these people are interacting with law firms. And I see that as my role. So I'm going to go record with Loom. If you don't know Loom, Loom, you should use it because it's a great way to interact, recording videos on screen and easily sharing them. I'm going to record what I would have done in the beginning, but we failed to. And when we send the follow-up of this email, which I assume Caitlin and Elizabeth will send, we'll have that Loom link in it where I'll go over and actually go in more detail some of the new features in LeanLaw that I wanted to show because I'll have more time to do so. So we'll send that out, and we're at the hour. So Caitlin, Elizabeth, any other announcements?
Just that the group is going to be online on July 15th. So stay clued into your inbox. And the next August meetup, that's going to be our next meetup. We're going to give you some information about that in the email as well. But it's really going to be about how to take advantage of the LeanLaw Accounting Pros program for all the things that we offer in terms of community and referrals and to deepen your knowledge of law firm accounting. That's something that we're really working on hard right now, so that we see this as a very mutualistic relationship, that we're going to help you and you're going to help each other, and you're going to be involved with LeanLaw, and we all win.
Yeah, we really see this as a relaunch. I mean, we feel like this is one of the most important things we do at LeanLaw. This community, this collaboration, this education with the accounting community. And as we forecast out the next 3 to 5 years, which I've been doing over the last 6 months, this is a core tenet in our operational tactics, and bringing wonderful folks like Carolyn into the mix and bringing them into the community and allowing their intellect and their shine to come into that and help these community connected is a priority for us. So we're at the hour. Carolyn, it was a pleasure meeting you, and I look forward to future conversations with you. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And thank you, Caitlin and Elizabeth, for your leadership on this, and thank you all for attending. And I don't have the con anymore, so I can't end the session. So whoever does should end the session.
I can do that, but just holding